back around 1990, I believe. And he's always had things that make everybody think, and he's going to do the same thing today. He builds power transformers. He spoke first about 93 or 94 at, I think it was an Extraordinary Science conference in 93. At that time, we were doing, in odd-numbered years, conferences that focused on technical building information, and then in the even-numbered years, we'd go more into theory. So Don's always been very practical. He's always built stuff that's real, that you can get your hands on, and from that, we prove and disprove all kinds of theories. He's promised us there will be a lot of sparks flying, and his basic thrust is explaining why the term ambient energy is better than zero-point energy, and the ambient background is a better term than ether. And so he's got a university degree in petroleum engineering and geology from the early 50s. He was first employed at Gulf Oil, later Phillips, and many, many others, including some independent companies. But he says oil is not a necessity anymore with the system that he's building. So here's Don Smith.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you. And we're going to hop along the bunny trail here and see some things. We can start with number one.
Okay. The following video is a presentation from Resonant Energy Systems. This material contained in this video is confidential and for the intended recipient's eyes only. Viewing by the personnel or persons is unlawful. If you are not the intended recipient of this, please turn this presentation off now. What we're looking at is the development of resonant energy systems for using the Casimir effect to produce more electricity out than we actually require in. Briefly stated, what we're looking at here is this is the scope output of the readings taken in various places in the system. The top or amber is the output sine wave as coming out through the regulated transformer inverted AC, 120 volts. The next group of sine wave is the intermediate inverter sine wave. The violet trace or magenta trace is the DC voltage at the input and back to the battery, and the bottom sine wave is the resonant backfeed energy sine wave. Currently, for this test, we're using a Tektronix model TDS 3034 Bravo. See if I can get this for fine measurements so that there is no question about the integrity of the measurements of our equipment. This scope is commonly available in the U.S. It may not be available abroad. Also, currently being used are flux commonly available model 177 and model 189 meters. The meter on the left, reading 115 volts, is currently coming from the output transformer. The model 189 on the right is measuring current battery voltage and return voltage to the battery from the system. This transformer that you're in front of the screen currently has the capacity to produce 120, 240, and 480 off the different taps. This particular meter here is the load and the voltage control for the transformer. In the foreground is the variac that's seen in the back, in the foreground of your picture presently. The whole unit is completely encased in this cabinet presently. Using a special capacitance inversion circuit, we're utilizing what's called the Casimir effect to produce AC 120 and DC 12, AC 140 and AC 480 as needed for commercial, industrial, or residential use. Briefly, presently, just a brief walk around the cabinet. This is a 12-volt DC load. The two 1 million candle-watt power lights in the foreground, we're going to switch those on. Those are 1 million candle-watt power lights. Here we see the backside of the transformer, the 122/40/480 transformer and the variac for controlling it. These lamps are for aviation landing lights. They're 1 million candle-watt power each. The load that is placed on them, we are going to also convert transfer the load from the lighting that we are using for our output here to the lighting for we're loading the system. This is a small system, but we right now the landing lights are putting on about a 60 amp DC load, or 60
kilowatt system.
It's about a 65 amp DC load per lamp. We have a 500 watt lamp to my left here that we're currently using. The sine wave is remaining stable on the scope meter. We have stable voltage without variation and stable sine wave. To be able to represent and capture all of the data, we've compressed 4 separate channels into one screen. That's hence the reason why we're dealing with very compressed data there. We're compressing quite a bit into a small space. This is a 20 amp AC space heater that we're currently loading with. The voltage is currently remaining fairly stable at 114, 115, and there's our DC voltage on return. We're pulling 65 amps aside from those lights out the top. Once again, this system can be closed. This is a brief review and presentation of Resonant Energy Systems energy generation product. Thank you.
Okay, check. Okay, we're going to look at some slides of some devices that I have done, and I'll talk in detail about those things as they come along. We have about 70 slides of devices which I have, which are working the way they're supposed to and doing exactly what you would hope they would do. Okay, the slides are ready to go.
Yeah, just still theoretically we're experiencing a little bit of technical.
Okay, can we look at those in better detail, maybe? They're not real. Are they clear enough that you can make them out?
Okay, is that better?
Those slides are real bright and real light. They're real bright, and show great detail. Okay, we have a Pancake device on the top there. This one, small Pancake device, and it was one of about 4 dozen different devices that I've done. With the Pancake device, you get an amplification of the energy such that you actually physically can generate through inductance and other things that there's an energy gain. And the energy gain is coming from the ambient background energy. It's not getting something for nothing. And we'll go into that in more detail later. Go ahead. Down below there. Okay, when I first started doing these things, I had one of Nikola Tesla books by Thomas Comfort Martin, and it's the official authorized biography of Tesla. And from that, there are a number of experiments which he shows in the book. So I went through every one of those experiments and in great detail, and that was my learning process for understanding what Tesla had done. And at the end of it, I realized that technology had advanced quite a bit, and a lot of new things which were available, which were not available at the time Tesla did his work. So all the things I've done are extensions off of Tesla, and they're beyond, in many cases, beyond where Tesla had arrived at when he had completed his work. Okay. Okay, I like to play with plasma tubes and that sort of thing. This is one of my early experiments where I took the ambient background energy using the test instruments that are used for plasma, and it worked beautifully. Okay, go ahead. Okay, this is something which I brought to the 1989 Tesla convention, and it was my black box that I brought, and it caused quite an upset and quite an uproar. But basically, it's a very simple device, and it was working completely off of the ambient background energy, and it could have basically ran forever if anyone wanted to look into it. Okay. Okay, this is one of the other devices. This one generated about 35 kilowatts. And that seems impossible with a small device like that, but it actually did. Go ahead. Next, please. We're seeing some of the other views of that particular device up close, so we'll skip along until we get through that. Next, please. Okay, that is actually turned up from where you're looking is probably okay, but what we see here, if you can read the things, this is a 35 kilowatt system. Okay, this is where I put a Tesla coil onto the toroid there, and use the Tesla coil to generate additional energy which was not present there originally, because again, all this stuff that comes from the outside or the ambient background is added into what you have. So it appears to be that you're getting energy from nowhere, which is not correct at all. You do not get energy from nowhere. It has to all come from somewhere. That is also a device I made especially for the Brazilian government and a project that I was doing for them. I was supposed to renew and remodel their whole power system for them, and they agreed. We had the written agreement, and everything was boxed up. But the problem was that every time they came up with the money to do the project, the value of the Brazilian money had decreased to where it was basically worthless. So the net result, after about 10 years of fooling with the project, it never got done. But we're still very good friends, and maybe someday we'll do it. They wanted to pay me with their money, and I couldn't. I had to pay for all the things that are necessary to make it happen with my money, but they were going to pay me with their money, and I couldn't very well do that. I didn't have quite enough funds to supplement the government of Brazil. Okay, we've gone to another device here. This is one which is currently being manufactured in Russia successfully in large quantity. And it's one of the devices that appear to get quite a bit of attention. There's eight different power sources there, and they're not intermingled. So each one of those power sources will do about 50 watts. About 50 watts, 50 kilowatts. Okay, we can go ahead. Okay, this is something which I have a patent on, which relates to getting a huge amount of energy out when you put a few milliamps of energy in, and you end up with like 100 kilowatts of energy out. And that won't make sense to anyone who thinks like an electrical system. You have to think in terms of the magnetic flux, because if you're using electrical flux, everything is dying a heat death, and you lose the energy almost immediately in electrical flux. But in magnetic flux, you can make as many copies of the original as you want without depleting the original at all. So if you're chasing electrical flux, you're chasing the wrong rabbit. You need to be chasing the magnetic resonance flux. Okay, this is a early stage of the 8-cylinder thing you saw just a moment ago, where it was demonstrated as to how simple it was and how well it worked. And this particular thing has been duplicated all over the world in many countries successfully. There have been people here who have tried to duplicate it and have done so successfully, but there are quite a few people who apparently had frustrations with this, and we need to talk about that on a one-to-one basis. Okay. Okay, well, actually, you're beginning, if you can focus that thing in where everyone can read it properly, you're looking at
Hold on. Did you want to explain it, or do you want to just let them read it?
well, let you explain it. You're familiar with it.
Okay.
Just take it a little bit at a time and where everybody can see what's going on. This is actually part of patent document, so you're seeing the thing firsthand before it was ever in the final form.
Okay, this invention relates to the dipole antenna system and their electromagnetic radiation. When used with a transformer, an appropriate energy collection system becomes a transformer generator. The invention collects and converts ambient energy, which with conventional devices is radiated and wasted. This is more of the like the Morey flux valve or the Morey valve or the Tesla valve. It's in concert with that similar technology in that what it does is when tuned to the proper frequency, you can pick up the strong ambient resonant energy that's available in your area, and the frequencies vary from place to place. A system that's assembled at your house may not work 10 miles away as well. What you have to do is tune it to match the work in your area. There's a gentleman in New York that has a system that 4 blocks away, when he moved from one house to another, almost was unfunctional until he retuned it. But basically it's picking up ambient resonant energy, and some individuals would tend to call that, well, I'm depleting the ambient RF that's produced by my radio station, and I'm sucking a black hole of the RF in, which you can do. In fact, we've run tests where we've set up everything from a regular monopole to a dipole to a ground plane in Yagi, and with signal strength meters located just 1,000 yards away, we've figured out how to suck down a specific frequency so that we can convert it to usable electromotive force to charge batteries and run things, and we've watched the signal strength deplete just 1,000 yards away. But Tesla ran his 1931 Pierce Arrow. There were very few, if any, commercial radio stations in some of the areas where he drove that, and it drove just fine, which proves that there's still plenty of magnetic resonant energy out there to be had. The dipole basically uses that. Sometimes you need to excite. I'm going to pass through some of the, because I'm explaining it, sometimes you need to excite the ambient magnetic field. You can excite it or disturb it like water in the pond, and as the ripples pass through, say, a wave generator, you can, if you have a small wave generator there, as it flux, just afloat on the surface of a pond, with a magnet in it, floating up and down over a coil, you can generate electricity just from some child jumping into the water. And all you need is a rectifier transformer circuit for each one of those that are in the water. You can disturb the magnetic field in different ways. If you can disturb the magnetic field in such a way that you're using little or no current or reduced wattage to do so, while disturbing the magnetic field, anytime you disturb it, you create a flux or a disturbance in the flux field. And when you disturb the flux field, 10,000 lines of flux over a conductor constitutes 1 volt amp or 1 watt. You have usable electromotive force. The dipole turns out to be one of the more efficient methods that Don's invented and worked with. Actually, he's invented applications that use the dipole that some of them he's not even shared with more than 2 or 3 people. Sometimes I've visited him and he's been thinking and explained inventions that haven't even been put to paper yet. But what you'll see here is that the dipole creates a disturbance. With a coil on the bottom, we create a disturbance in the magnetic field, and the plates are our inductors that we take through the transformer rectifiers that that make it usable. The dipole generator here, you can see the plates. The top plate is an inductor, the bottom plate's an inductor, the middle plate is an insulator, and there's your dipole circuit with your exciter coil. Much like the 8 coil device that he was explaining earlier, the disc in the middle, all it has is just voids with a material like bismuth, neodymium, or there's actually another material that even works better that are sprayed on something as simple as a plexiglass disc or a phonograph record. And in one of those, he actually, one of the prototypes that he still has that's working, there's still a phonograph record in it. This is an assimilation of the plasma with the tube that all it's doing is disturbing the magnetic resonant field, and you have your inductor coils that, or inductor plates in this case, that also qualify as a capacitor, plate capacitor, to 17, where your terminal block where you go to your transformer rectifier. There's many different applications. The one that is now on your screen, let me see if I can, I'm going to shrink that down a little bit here. We're going to reduce that so you can see it at, this one, 21 and 20 there is a series of plates that are assembled. You'll see in a moment that on Don Smith has a website that he has a product gallery that he numbers many of them 1 through 9. And let's see, this one isn't on the website, I don't think, Don, but www.altenergy-pro.com, and a little bit we'll put it up. But this one right here is similar to the plasma tube, but there's number 1 is a dipole with north facing up, and I told myself I wasn't going to do this. I was thinking about getting out that funny green laser, but Don has a laser pointer there. Well, here, I'll just use the pointer on the mouse here. Okay, that's the North Pole. Down here is the South Pole. There's an exciter coil that all we're doing with this coil is using that dipole magnet. We're creating a disturbance. We're not producing a generation of electromotive force by sheer mechanical effort and magnets passing over induction coils. This is a different approach. It's creating a resonance that's allowing, in this particular case, 20 and 21 constitute a group of 11 plates with 20 insulators plates between them. It's a see, Don, feel free to jump in whenever. Should we keep going?
Don? Yes.
Yeah.
What was the question, please?
Okay. Okay. This is okay. You want to?
Okay, that's just a general statement of what the was all about, and other than that,
okay.
What you've just seen there is something which European patent has already been issued on. I had tried for years and years to work with the United States Patent Office and the Department of Energy and the various other people connected to the U.S. government, and they never could prove what I was trying to do was wrong. They just simply sandbagged me and caused me to spend several $1 million of my own money trying to work with them, and running my biological clock out, among other things. So I decided I had enough of that, and so I went to the European Patent Office and actually have a very good relationship with the Russian Academy of Sciences and a number of other people in China and other places. So I have no difficulty getting a patent through the European Patent Office these days. So I have completely given up on the United States government because of the dishonesty and their methods of handling situations which they don't understand. Okay, where are we now? Okay, this device is one which, if you don't have any good working knowledge of resonant energy, that you would want to purchase. It costs about $50, and it's supplied through one of the services. You can get it through several science services. But basically what it amounts to is that you have a transmitter and a receiver. And of the transmitter and receiver, you can have, like in a radio station or television station, you can have hundreds of thousands of people tuning in, or thousands of people tuning in, and it doesn't deplete the system at all. So in magnetic resonance energy, the output and the receptor things is a multiplying method which works very well. And almost all of my devices depend on that system in order to get the extra energy, which apparently was not there originally. Okay, this is a pitch for my resonant energy systems. And I don't know whether you can see it well enough to make it out or not, can you?
It was too hard to read. I'm just scrolling through it. Now, okay.
Okay. Yes. Are we ready to go to the ultimate presentation here? Where are we in time-wise?
Okay. That was a letter from Don recommending a recommendation for a submarine power system. It uses a very unique material called terphenol D, which also happens to be the it's extremely expensive, but the most optimum material. That one device that you looked at earlier that had the 8 coils on it. It's probably as good a diamagnetic as you can obtain. In this, let's see here, in the picture before you, there's an example that the one device that he talked about earlier that, well, I can't get a good display of it. I was trying to, but the disc in the middle, if you use terphenol D and just make slots in the disc so that it interrupts the field between the magnetic coils, you deflate and inflate the magnetic field between them, and the field inflating and deflating constitutes a magnetic field, flux field passing over the conductors and produces the electromotive force. In this case here, the rod that you're looking at is made of terphenol D, which is extremely expensive. You can use the inductors in the ambient magnetic flux field that is not stagnant or stable on its own, induces a voltage and a current in these coils, and therefore provides usable electromotive force.
This thing you're looking at here is an offshoot from the military use of sonic methods for submarines. In that case, the energy goes out about 50 miles and can come back about 50 miles. And you can read what's going on with the instruments. In this particular case, we're using a rod, terphenol D, which is similar to what the military use would have been. And the terphenol D is very highly, it's titanium zirconate, in case you want to know exactly what it is. And it has very unusual electrical characteristics which you can use to your advantage in building these devices like I like to build. It's also a little bit expensive. When I originally started on this, those rods you're looking at there were about $3,000 each. So there's other types of material that you can use that will react somewhat similarly, and certain types of stainless steel will have some of those same characteristics. So you can pick and choose and get something which does not cost so much, maybe.
Okay, we apologize for this one being on its side, but this is actually the schematic that was inside the black box. And if you look up at the top right-hand corner at number 1, that's the lead that came out of it. That was actually the ground lead. Much like the crystal radio set or the Tesla valve or the Moray valve, you had to have a ground lead. And in this case, it's not quite the same as the Moray valve or development, but what happened is it produces electricity the same way. It gets there by a different route. Two of the devices that we saw earlier, that we saw the wire induction coils, are basic forerunners of, or similar to this system. But the suitcase ran and ran and ran, and the suitcase is still somewhere today. I don't have permission to tell you where it's at, but it is somewhere today. Do you have any comment on that one, Don?
Well, there's several different devices represented here. Here's the alternator part of it here. And of course, this is your bridge system here. And this is the input part back here. This is basically your L1 coil right here. This would be your electrical system input into the L1. And this is a timing device. It adjusts the timing so that you're getting the frequency that you want on your L1. Okay, this is basically the L2 system here, and it's split up in two different parts for reasons of getting a better signal into the deal. This, of course, we mentioned was a diode bridge, where you're taking the alternating current system here and changing it to DC so that you can reform the waveform here and through the electrical system here. And of course, this is the output transformer here. And when you end up with this thing, you end up with a waveform that you can use in any system that's out there, including your computer or whatever else. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and pass through the most of the text for you, Don. You can just explain it. Okay.
Okay. What we're seeing here is the right angle component of the different factors that are involved in an electrical system. The magnetic effect and gravitational seem to be related in some respect. The electrical thing is on its own. Okay. Okay, this is explaining the separation of the block wall in regards to the electrical component and the magnetic component. If you're going to go the electrical route, you lose the battle before you get there. If you go the magnetic resonance route, the world is your oyster. This is explaining how the different parts of the electrical of the Tesla coil is separated so that different parts of it perform different functions. The ideal Tesla coil is one that eliminates the magnetic part and dwells on the electrical end of the system. But that's a mistake. If you really want to get in business, you have to go to the resonant magnetic flux. Sorry. Go ahead. This is explaining how the amplification factor, which actually in fact is the Fibonacci series, showing how things increase with resonant energy. You have this same resonant energy showing up in the growth habits of seashells and all sorts of things. The energy is amplifying as the system multiplies, and the output is much greater than the original input. Okay. These are simply some mathematical notations in regards to the various things you run into in the electrical system and magnetic. Okay, that is sort of self-explanatory, I do believe. What you're seeing here is part of a book that I did. The book is on a CD-ROM, and I used to sell copies of it, and I sold over 40,000 copies of it worldwide. And here in the United States, not too many bought it, but overseas there was quite a following. And so with that in mind, I decided if I was going to be successful, I should be chasing my rabbits where I was most likely to be successful. And that's why I moved out of the United States and started doing things overseas.
Okay, Don.
Okay, this is showing how energy is transferred from one media to another, and how the electrons are reacting to that. Okay, these are some early experiments I did, which show how simple this sort of device can be. There's several different versions of it. Okay, this is showing the the electrical and magnetic interplay and how you go about achieving certain frequencies that you might be interested in incorporating into your device.
Let's see here.
Okay. Okay, that address, I might tell you, is no longer applicable. After about 30 years in the air, at that address, we recently moved to North Dallas area. So we're not at Houston anymore. Okay. Some of these statements here are simply self-explanatory, I think.
Don does have all of this available on a book, or you can purchase a PDF of this by just emailing him at his altenergy.pro, and for a small fee, he'll email you a copy of this PDF.
Okay, these are some various devices that have lots of amperage. You run into the problem where people think you have lots of volts but no amps, that sort of thing. That's not necessarily true at all. If you know the right way to construct your Tesla coils, they'll have an amperage equal to, if not greater than, the voltage. This is case in point. And this is showing how the systems break down. And the power out of the plant here might be like 5,000 or 50,000 volts, and as it comes along, you get into where it starts coming down the system, and you start transformers reducing the power, and when you finally get down to your house, it's maybe a couple of thousand volts in this general area.
Okay, let's see.
And this is all using electrical resonant systems. Anytime you have alternating current, you have a resonant system. And if you use the magnetic flux component of it, you've got the full force and effect of it. You can multiply it and do things with it that you cannot do with electrical flux. You're wasting your time if you're going the electrical flux route. It's not going to take you anywhere except to heat death, which is a normal system which you are taught in physics in the university. They don't bother to teach you about the resonant magnetic flux for obvious reasons.
Okay, I think that's about everything in the PDF there. This was just a quick note off of the website. This is one of the devices. That's there's a neodymium magnet. There, one each in each of the PVC cores there that have a counterpart on the opposite side. The rotating disc inside this particular one happens to be a phonograph record with holes drilled in it so that the field is disrupted, much like the drawing earlier. And the small motor turns on 28 milliwatts at 12 volts and just rotates the phonograph record so that it creates a disruptor or interrupter Terphenol D is the most advantageous material, although bismuth or powdered neodymium will work, and spray adhesive on an old phonograph record and sprinkle it with the even the neodymium dust is enough to disrupt it, and if you have the holes equally spaced, there's little or no load on the phonograph record while it rotates, disrupting the field. This is Don's website here. This is one of the showcases that you can look at a lot of the material. At least you can see what's on his website. And here's the front page, and there's a contact down. You can see the contact point right here. If you want to, that's the best way to email him. Remember, Don, like us, some of us get more than 1 or 2 emails a day. Don's average is about 300. I average about 1,100 myself. Make sure that, when you email him, that you put some large block letters, like TeslaTech or something, so that he knows that your email's not one of the 250 spam mail out of the, that come with his regular 300, okay? Don, now I think it's, how about your demonstration?
Okay, we're going on into an actual demonstration here of some of the things that relate to what you're interested in. And I'm going to also need someone to come and help me with the...
Okay, I just had to get a microphone on so I could come over and give you a hand. Hold on here, I got to make sure mine's set the right height. Okay.
Okay, let me tell you what these devices are here. This is a Tesla coil with an output on it. This is a dielectric testing machine that we see here. And what we're basically going to do in electronic gadgets like capacitors and resistors and all this and that, they have their own characteristics. In this particular case here, a capacitor is a blocking device. So I don't know whether you're fully aware of that or not, but when something goes into one side of a capacitor, it does not pass through that capacitor at all. What does pass through